Yeah. Okay. Would you have if you have any questions that you would like to actually raise with me, please say them or repeat them if you found something on Blackboard. If you saw some questions which were relevant to you, could you please raise them now? I had some questions sent to me by students, and I have replied to them. So first of all, what I said to one student who wrote to me was, we will just worry at this very moment about assignment 1 because assignment 2 is actually a follow-up. Then, so in regard to assignment 2, what I said was, what I'm looking for, so in regard to assignment 2, because some of the questions were about assignment 2, what I'm looking for is a, by then, informed understanding of how to look at literacy to actually help us to generate a sequence of 5 lessons, which is unique, which is your own, which is creative, which makes links to the curriculum, and I will be largely looking at the relationship, how you resolve between higher order skills and lower order skills. So we will be developing skills of how to actually make this link. So that's for assignment 2. For assignment 1, I'm basically looking at you theorizing your experiences. And I'm not asking you to read the Bible on literacy and know everything about literacy, but just make little framing of your experiences that makes me confident that you have read something. So that's the idea, so that your e-portfolio or portfolio doesn't look like a list of experiences, but it actually shows that it is reflected, some form of theoretical reflection on your experiences. Okay, so when we look at the slide 1, or slide 2 actually, of a PowerPoint, I have put that, if you can see, I have put that picture from that video where Piaget, and you probably have heard of Piaget, where Piaget talks about himself. Right. And what we have there is a 3.5-year-old girl being asked to simply draw the triangle that was put in front of her. And as you can see, the girl is not actually drawing the triangle. So basically the reason why I posted this picture in the PowerPoint was for us to reflect on the things that we take as obvious. And I will not go into the details of philosophies, why the child is drawing a square as opposed to a circle. But as teachers, we need to be actually aware that what we see may not be necessarily what the child sees. And this is very important because we live in the world that glorifies imitation and explicit teaching. And sometimes these terms, there's nothing wrong with these terms, but sometimes they are misunderstood what they mean. We think that if we put a triangle in front of a child, obviously the child is seeing a triangle. And I will challenge you, because if you put this triangle in front of a child, the child will not walk into it. If it was an object, the child is not going to hit it. So somehow the child sees it. But when you ask the child to draw it, he's drawing something, or she's drawing something completely different. And is that drawing, what do you think? Is that triangle reflecting something about the child that the child sees wrongly? And we know, I mean, I don't even have to ask you that, because we are educated by now through society and through different readings. We know that the child is not drawing wrongly. But what happens in teaching, we do everything to make sure that we eradicate child's perceptions and we replace them with our own already educated perspectives on what is out there. And when we will be talking throughout this unit about how to approach literacy, I would like you to always keep in mind that what a child sees may not actually need to be an object of us to fight, but rather ideas to work with. Would you like to comment on it? So yes, I'm referring to the girl drawing. So basically the reason why I put it there is because for assignment 2, we will draw, or we will explore this picture in greater detail. But for assignment 1, what I like you to think about is, when you think of your experiences, were you as a child, or are children today in schools actually enabled to build on their own experiences, or is the teacher basically pushing them to eradicate what they see and make them see what the teacher sees? Yes, Stacy, that's good. So you said, I have worked with a child whose words jump around the page when they read. But is this a form of visual processing problem, or is it like, because what we have on the picture is that drawing of a triangle, it's not a disability. It's just a different way of seeing. Yes, the teacher may not understand the child, because you never can actually put yourself in the shoes of a child, right? Because we never know what's in their heads. So I would suggest that rather than use the commonly used words, which is we need to understand the child, I would replace that sort of way of thinking with something like, we should work with children's perceptions and not assume that they see what we see. And I think that's a healthy attitude, right? We may not understand the child, but what we should actually remember, that children might see the world differently than we see. And it's a very complex process. We actually socialize ourselves to seeing colors, to seeing the world in a particular way. But because it comes so naturally to us, and it's so embedded in our culture to actually socialize children to seeing things in a increasingly same way, that it escapes us, and we can't sometimes remember that when we were children we were drawing rectangles instead of drawing triangles. So much for this picture. When you actually when you look at your assignment 1, have a look to what extent was the teacher enabling children to work with their own perceptions of the world, and to what extent was the teacher actually eradicating those perceptions, right? So this is a kind of a point that I would like you to reflect on as you actually write your assignment 1. Now, Stacy, your wording is good. Your wording is good. But what I'm trying to steer us away is from conventional words. Like, for example, you need to know your student. How can you do you know your children? We all know we can't know ourselves. So the reason why I'm trying to put a little bit of distance between the way I teach and the way how commonly people use words is for us to take a bit of a reflection. We can't know the student, but what we can know is that they will be different. That we can bet on. Every child will be different, and we can bet on. And in that sense, that teaches us to, rather than believe that we know the student, we can give them this and that and they will be fine. I want us always to have a little bit of a critical distance to our own assumptions about what children are, what they can do, a little bit of distance. But we can definitely bet, exactly, thank you, Stacey, but we can bet our last pair of shoes, all children are different. And this picture, I honestly, Honestly, I was shocked when I saw this video and when I saw this child drawing rectangles on rectangles and not a triangle. I preach differences, and yet when I saw it, every time I see it, I get shocked. I get shocked to what degree children see the world differently, or people see the world differently. So yes, for the purpose of assignment 1, as you reflect on your past experiences or current experiences, look at a little bit what teachers do. Do they push children, or do they enable them to actually explore their own visions and therefore work with their own perceptions? I think so too. And that idea of asking the child questions, we will develop further for assignment 2. But yes, I call it an exploratory environment where we enable children to explore how much their perceptions enable them to be in the world, successful, to do well, to do the things they actually want to do, right? So we will be creating it, so exactly linear. It is about creating an environment where children can explore how what they see helps them to achieve things. Because sometimes their different framing might actually enable them to do more than our old framing of things. So exactly linear. That's exactly what I mean. Okay, let us have a jump to the next picture. And this is just a reminder of the things I said before, and I think the idea of world to word to world as a principle for literacy is very important, because we don't teach them to read, we teach them to use skills to be in the world. Right? We teach them skills to be in the world, and those skills will be mathematics, those skills will be physics. So reading is not in isolation. Reading is part of being in the world, right? And it's not going to be just reading. It will be also oral literacy. It will be telling stories, reading stories, and participating in different contexts of communication. So we're not interested in them being able to differentiate letters or spell, but actually communicate, effectively communicate. And that means different contexts, different situations, and responding to different demands. Now, this is very important. It has actually a biological basis. Children, when they are little, we all have 2 hemispheres, and the language management is in the left brain, the writing and the reading, but it's not there at birth. It gets created as a result of education. So communication is this is really rough, but it helps actually as a metaphor. Communication is in the right hemisphere of the brain, and now the skill of communication, in order to actually transfer to reading and writing, needs to move to the left side of the brain. And it cannot move unless the link between communication and writing is created. Right? So children do not develop, or they may develop if we train them badly, but if we actually want children to learn literacy in order to be in the world, we need to create a link between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. And the only way we can do it is if we formulate literacy as informed participation in the world. Multidimensional, informed participation in the world. And then we can see that the problems that very often researchers have when they teach literacy is they say, well, we can teach them read and write, but we can't teach them read and write for comprehension. We still have this problem. And my argument is the only reason they have a problem with comprehension because they never started with comprehension. I'll just read the comment from the student. Just 1 second. should we be referring at all to reading literacy based on technologies or just what constitutes general reading knowledge? Well, if literacy means capacity to participate in communicative contexts, and some of those contexts do involve technologies, then in that sense, I would suggest that not raising the issue of technology would be pretty much like wiping out that aspect of engagement in the world. I am not saying you have to refer, but if we want to say that we actually teach literacy in order to enhance students' engagement in the world, technology is part of that world, so it does count. And in that sense, we would have to say, in that sense, we might actually suggest that there is no such a thing like a general reading knowledge. That's very interesting, isn't it? There may not be a general reading knowledge because all knowledge is context-bound. We know how to write a letter, maybe we may know how to communicate on Facebook, but I wouldn't, what kind of general reading knowledge I would have, I can't write a letter to the court, or legal letter, or I don't know, there are many contexts in which I can't participate. So what we actually do develop is not actually general reading, but we develop highly specialized skills for reading. And that's very interesting, isn't it? That's why we need to expand the context of students' participation so that their ways in which they actually utilize the reading skills or writing skills become enriched or enhanced. It's very interesting. I never thought about it, so thank you for this comment. But I never thought about this as general reading. But now when you raised it, I'm asking myself, is there such a thing like a general reading? All of them are developed in order to participate in these contexts, So if you find yourself in a new context, you draw on the old context that you feel that actually would assist you in the new situation. So in a sense, you always draw on situated knowledge rather than general. Nevertheless, I think I made the point about being in the world, it's what counts, and therefore expansion of those contexts of participation. I'll just read another comment, they're very good. I guess with the use of technologies, children still need to know the basics of how to read and write before they engage in their use. Well, that's a good point, but let me think about it. And it really doesn't matter at this very moment for the assignment 1, but I think we're starting to set up some sort of conceptual basis for assignment 2, where we actually will be teaching in those lessons. Before they engage, they have to know some basics before. And what particular situated context we will be using that we would say is primary, that is preparatory. What would make, you see, if there is no general reading, then there cannot be basics. All there can be is context of engagement, very specific situated context of engagement. So, and when we actually don't teach basics of literacy, but specific context of engagement, what happens, we ensure that those contexts of engagement elicit from children meaningful engagement with the text, because they don't communicate in order to read what the teacher tells them and how, but they read in order to communicate. They read in order to actually use information for a particular purpose. I know it's a bit revolutionary and a bit different from conventional literacy, but why not consider it? General reading would mean that there is general literacy. There is no general literacy because some people can tell the difference between C and H, but they can't actually participate in what we consider context requiring reading and writing. They can't write, they can't read formal letters, they can't even read a love letter or write a love letter. So people have actually context-specific problems. So this is very important. The communicative purpose of literacy. The communicative purpose of literacy. If we teach literacy for communication, so that children learn as the need emerges for learning because they need to communicate, then we never ever get into a trouble that most researchers in literacy get into, which is, oh, they can read and write, what they call it, read and write, which means they can differentiate between C and H, but they don't understand what they are reading. I mean, how often do I see research and videos on YouTube, people saying, oh, we have done all this basic training, but our kids can read the story, but they just blur it out, right? They don't read for comprehension. Interesting. They don't read for comprehension because the context in which we ask them to read is meaningless to them. They don't read a story for a test in order to communicate to a friend or to another group of peers. They read to please the teacher. So yes. So basically what I'm saying is, why not actually use if they are to learn computer, if they're gonna use technologies, and technology means different contexts in which people use technology-based text, then they will be learning reading and writing in order to actually meaningfully engage and to create things as a result out of those engagements, rather than learn the basics of it one day, they might apply them. Now, this is a very important point. I'll just before I read something, yes, thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment too. But I'll just explain to you what I have learned even myself. I mean, I used to talk about this the same way, about this concept, general and basic and purposeful one day. But there's a very nice way of thinking about it, which is called teaching. It's a just-in-case pedagogy. A pedagogy just in case. Just in case one day you may need to know how to behave at the dentist, we will drill a dialogue at the dentist. And just in case you need one day to do this, we will drill you into this. So it's called just-in-case pedagogy. But what I'm saying is there's another pedagogy, which is called, just people very often refer to it as just in time, just enough, and just for me. Okay, so just in time, just enough, and just for me. And it's a pedagogy where we actually create context of engagement, and the kids get out of it stuff they need, and they get it just in time when they need it, just enough what they need for now, and just for themselves what they need to do the things they would like to do. So this is this kind of differentiation. I like thinking about these two different types of pedagogy. A just-in-case pedagogy, just in case one day you might need it, and then the other one is just in time, just enough, and just for me. That's the kind of new concept that people came up with recently. Okay, so Karen Sinclair is my PhD student, actually, and she has given a presentation where she said, you know, people come to school with knowledge. 7-year-old kids have accumulated quite a lot of knowledge, and very often this knowledge and these skills are kind of dumbed down, and then we put them in front of these texts which are generic, and you know, I'm not saying all schools do it, and we're talking about principle now. Okay, we talk about system and principles. What we would like to have is activities of engagement where children can actually build on what they know, as opposed to leave everything they know in front of the school and walk into the school as empty vessels that now teachers will be filling with words of wisdom. Let me now jump to the next slide. Actually, second next, the one with quotes. Okay, so we will just move to the one with quotes. I have pulled them up from Yetia's, from basically Akara documentation. And I did that to show you that the Australian curriculum, a lot of people have problems with the Australian national curriculum. I actually don't. I have a bit more amicable attitude towards it, because at its heart, it does talk about higher order skills. It doesn't say to students at the end of the year 1 or 2 or 3, the general papers informing the curricula. They don't say we want students to remember how to tell the difference between C and H and whatever. What they say, all of this, all of that, differentiation between C and H, differentiation how to engage meaningfully when writing a letter, or how to talk or write a story. They say at the end of the day, what we want we want young people with knowledge, understanding, and skills and values that take advantage of opportunity and are able to face the challenges of this new era with confidence. When I was a student, to me, words like that sounded like, oh yeah, policy paper, big words. I couldn't see a meaning in it. Everybody says these words. But when I am now on the other side of the bench, when I'm actually teaching, I see that all these details that are in the curriculum, they are for teachers to use as frames of reference to see how much is there, and we can use, but we can only use if it serves these objectives, that people develop knowledge and understandings and skills and values that enable them to actually face the challenges of this new era with confidence. So we want them to actually be critical participants. Someone sent me a draft of a portfolio of the assignment 1, and they also wrote critical participants in the society, in the knowledge society, and yeah, that's exactly the point, right? So the overarching framework of the curriculum is not to know the difference between the verb and the adjective, but actually the very purpose for which students need to know these differences, and which means we need to actually explore more relationships, because as teachers, of what is involved, because that's the ultimate objective of ours. Okay, well, let us just a little bit hurry a little bit more. And you can't see it. Unfortunately, you cannot see it because I just added that particular picture when you were not looking. I'm very sorry, I just did it this afternoon, but it doesn't matter. There is a reading I have put in one of the modules, I don't know which one of the early modules. I have put a reading by Maren Ockerman, which is something, the big bad, I can't remember what it was, the big bad word or whatever it is called. Okay, Ockerman, big bad answer. Okay, it's a paper by Ockerman, big bad answer, and I'm not sure whether you can see the photograph because I'm hoping that I'm actually showing it, but I don't think I am. You can't see the screen. So in that paper, Big Bad Answer by Maren Ockerman, I think she's Ockerman like this. She includes there a yellow table, and she talks about comprehensible engagement in literacy for comprehension, for meaningful participation. And she actually, the table actually illustrates when students speak, listen, and read. And she says When teachers create a situation and think of assignment 1, you know, the kinds of tasks that teachers engage students in, from your personal experience, and right, or from books. When you think of the tasks in which teachers engage students, when is the student actually speaking, listening, and reading? For what and what reasons are in students' head? So what she's saying, when the teacher is the primary knower, you've got to draw the triangle. Can't you see what I see? Can't you see it's got all these 3 angles? Can't you see you are wrong? Can't you see this is the meaning of it? Adam, tell me, can't you see what I see? Adam says, yes, I can see. Therefore, Thomas, you must be seeing wrong. Right? What does that mean? It's the memorization. So the teacher is the primary knower. And then in that table, Ockerman says, when the teacher is the primary knower, then students speak only to be validated by the teacher. It's a kind of monkey training. I'm very sorry to use this metaphor, but that's pretty much how I feel about it. When the teacher is the primary knower in the classroom, students speak to be validated by the teacher. But when students are possible knowers, when their experiences are legitimized, they're seen as valid and not denied, when children can explore what is it that they know, what is it that they can achieve through what they know, then they speak to convince others or even themselves. So there is a difference between an activity where children listen to someone else's report. It could be a 7-year-old team. A team of 7-year-old child created a report on the way other children were doing a cooking class, right? They were cooking and children photographed it and made a report. And then they presented it to other group, and the other group might comment, and they would say, we didn't see this as it was not sufficient, it was maybe something, it was good, bad. Then we can have a discussion, and children can correct how they reported on that cooking in order for their speech to be more convincing. You can see the point? So when children talk to each other and when they're involved in an activity where their talking counts in order to make the message more comprehensible and more clear, then they speak in order to convince others, not the teacher. They don't seek the validation. They explore the strategies they have in order to actually come across more convincing, better. And if they don't have them, they can ask someone else, or as for in assignment 2 I will be teaching you, we can give them tools to explore how to sound more convincing, right? So that's the difference. So students speak. The reasons for which students speak, it could be in order to be validated by the teacher or in order to, for example, convince others. Then in the table she has, students listen to other students. When do students listen to other students? When the teacher is the primary knower, then the students don't have a reason to listen to what their peers are saying. Because at the end of the day, it's the teacher who's going to validate it or not. So why should I be listening to Adam when at the end of the day, it's the teacher who's supposed to be doing the listening? Right? Because it's the teacher who's going to give a tick or not. Again, we're talking about this literacy for comprehension, right? So communication is primary objective of literacy. Communication in different contexts. And now literacy is about doing this communication in a more effective way, with effective tools. So when you talk about multiliteracies, you talk about using different media. So this is not in order to be more colorful, but more effective. So when the teacher is the primary knower, students don't listen to what Adam is saying because it's the teacher's job. But when students have to discern the credibility, the value, the relevance, the strength, the impact of what Adam is saying, when their objective is actually to engage, because they are the ones who will be actually making decisions of what Adam's message means to them, they are listening. So for assignment 1, you can see that there are different tasks which teachers use for literacy teaching. Some of them, we could say, are not necessarily book-centered or teacher-centered. What they are about who holds the knowledge, who is the primary knower, and therefore how much the fact that the teacher is seen as the primary knower, how much this actually creates a situation where children disengage. And when they disengage, they do not engage in understanding how different tools of literacy can empower them. So we are still talking about assignment 1. So we were talking left brain and right brain. Left brain develops, but in order for the left brain to develop in a way that actually is connected to comprehension, which is the right brain, right hemisphere. So the children have communication skills in the right brain. That's what we all have. And then as we learn writing, we develop a little thing at the back here, right here. It's called being able to read and write. And you can develop that thing whether you are 4 or 40. It will still, your brain will actually grow this area for literacy even if you are 40 when you learn. So there's no big hurry with it. But in order for the right brain to talk to the left brain, we need to have meaningful context of engagement. But in order to have meaningful context of engagement, we have to now create activities which actually engage children, which means where children's knowledge counts. Therefore, as I'm using Ockerman, my example is when the teacher is situated as the primary knower, then children disengage. There is no reason to participate authentically. Let's call it authentically. But when the teacher is not the primary knower, when the situation or activity is created in such a way that children have stakes in listening and in speaking, in participating, then children explore, and all of a sudden they find themselves in what is called a literacy-rich environment. So despite of the way how people talk in textbooks, literacy-rich classroom is not the one that has all these pictures hanging on the wall and all the text and lots of books. If children are not aware of the relevance of all of that, those pictures and anything on the wall are just white noise. They are irrelevant. So a literacy-rich environment I would define as one where children's knowledge counts, and therefore they engage in a context of communication which enables them to explore their own communication strategies and expand in order to sound more convincing, stronger, more appropriate if you wish. Because they will say that if we write this way, nobody gets it, so maybe we should actually write differently. Bigger letters, more colorful letters. And if you start saying, well, maybe more colorful letters would look better, instantly you bring now dyslexic children. Because as I will be showing for assignment 2, dyslexic children have a problem of organization. It doesn't mean they don't organize. They just organize differently. How do I know? Because you can see in classroom dyslexic children that they don't walk into the walls. They don't walk into teachers, which means they do discern. They do discern, just differently. And dyslexic children don't have problems just with reading. They have problems. They don't have a problem. They just don't discern, or the processes by which they create differences are different and are not facilitated through a normal participation in the community. They need extra or different strategies. So when we say to children, or maybe by using color, by using different ways of organizing information on our poster, we could make it more, having more impact, be more joyful, more interesting. Dyslexic children benefit instantly because changing the color draws their attention to differences between one letter and the next letter. So you can see that there are many advantages in creating meaningful context of participation and children exploring how what they know enables them to act convincing, and if it doesn't, then they look for more information from their peers, from the teacher, from different resources in order to now actually be more powerful, because they need to win. We communicate to win, right? We don't talk. None of us just talked. I'm not just talking now. I'm looking for ways of explaining what is in my head and in a way that I win. And what I mean by that is that I generate in you a reflection. That's all I want. And if I do, then in a sense we could say I won. So it's a kind of metaphor, right? It's not about fighting or competing. It's a nice metaphor. So we communicate to win. And when we're not winning, which means some children don't understand us or we don't sound convincing enough, then we need to explore how to do it better. And then we have a reason to learn, because I want them to get what I actually wanted them to see. And then they keep listen and explore and discuss with one another and change strategies and things like that. So for assignment 1, explore whether your experiences were like the ones I'm talking about or were more straitjacketing children. Well, let's have a look at the next slide, which I have created for us, which is the one about Aboriginal painting. It's the first one. Any questions for now? I'll just watch the chat just in case you have questions, but let me now just point out. Aboriginal painting is not just a painting. No painting is just a painting, but I'm just going to stick here to this. I had a pleasure Yes, Lini, I'm glad it does. I'm glad it does. I have to say that even though we do teach literacy in our country, it's still an open book. It's not a closed book. So when you listen to me and when you watch your teachers at work and your mentors and whoever, I want you to remember this is a field of inquiry. It's nowhere. No way it is closed. No way it is the job done. We are still toddlers, I have to say. So when we look at the situation, people painting, and especially so what it is, we have an Aboriginal person here, and Aboriginal paintings probably have many different purposes of engagement in reality in the world, but very often what they are stories, and actually a lot of symbols on the painting are a map of the context where the story unraveled. So imagine engaging children in an activity. If you actually now look at the next slide, sorry for jumping, which is an iPhone with Google Maps, and children looking at the map and with Google Maps, different types of maps. My imagination is limited, but what I wanted to show you that there are different types of maps. Each map is a story. One story is the one that Aboriginal person said and painted, and another story is your story when you open Google Maps and you want to check something and you check it for your own purpose because you want to find out where Thailand is and you want to find out if it is a flat or not because you would like to cycle like me, or you would like to see whether it has beaches. So in that sense, it's your story. Now, what can children do with that? What can children do with me showing to you, for example, or trying to sort of make you think of maps? Children can use the concept of different concepts of maps. Children can get engaged in an activity where we actually using different kinds of strategies for telling a story. They could actually map out their own story. And if you look actually at this Aboriginal painting, yet again, so go back to the slide, previous slide with an Aboriginal painting, the little painting next to it, which has a brown background, it's actually what we call the legend, which is symbols explaining what's in the picture. Imagine how much fun children would have if we actually engage them in painting a story. And where's literacy there? It's an oral literacy. We could even engage them in the possibility to actually see how Aboriginal children, we could find a video with Aboriginal children doing a painting and seeing how Aboriginal children talk about a painting. And then we could actually try to see whether and then we could actually have a look at how other texts, we could actually compare different types of genre of text, and children could actually compare the Cinderella text with an Aboriginal child talking about it, whether it's the same kind of rhythm, whether it's the same kind of structuring of a sentence, the length of sentences. And then we could ask children to actually produce a little map so that the little circles on the picture, on the painting, I explained what are these, what are the big circles on the picture. And I learned from my Aboriginal friend, who's well, it's not a friend, a person I met when I was teaching at the Catholic University in Canberra. He's a famous painter of Australia. I forgot his name at this very moment. And he said that he explained to me that the little circle would be a little meeting. A big circle would be a big family meeting. Little crosses or whatever they are in your footsteps. So basically, by drawing the trace that an animal leaves on the sand, we know there was an emu, there was a lizard, there was a snake there. You can see? So now we have a wonderful, and we could actually put we could make it actually, what do we call it, multimedia painting, that later on we could record children painting it and telling the story. We could then attach to it, so we could record a video, and we could put this video on YouTube, on, I don't know, wherever, build it into a PowerPoint, just like we have in this picture, and next to it create a big legend where children put the symbol and write down what is the meaning of each of the symbols. They read, they write, but they do it for the purpose in order to tell someone else a story. Now, why would it be engaging for them? Because this story could be created in order to, as part of the activities that class is creating, or different classes are creating, to actually create an exhibition on activities in the school or what children do. It could be I have much wilder ideas that you have never heard of them. Like, for example, children could create, and I'm going to do it with my 7- and 8-year-old children I'm going to start in January, and the experiment will run in July. With little 7- and 8-year-old children, we'll create an activity where children will create a television, one day on Australian television. And some of them will be doing exactly this cultural activity. Some of them might do cooking shows. Some of them might do something else. So, and then we could actually record all this process of production and display as a one day on Australian television from kids' point of view. It's a large activity which actually invites children to plan, to timetable, and to engage more lower level skills, but for the purpose of actually being critical, creative, learn to work in teams, and start developing the idea that the reason why obviously you will understand it better than the children, but that's the idea, that lifelong learning means as we engage with others, there's always a need to learn more, right? As we engage with others, there's always a need to learn more, because people will ask us questions, and we will either discuss with them, or we will ask the teacher, or we will ask someone else, or we will look for resources explaining to us how to do it better or differently. So those more complex activities target complex skills, but not to the detriment of lower level skills, but actually to create an umbrella for those lower level skills to be meaningful. So for now, I would like to finish right here, and I will ask you if you have any questions. But for now, what I wanted to just simply signal in relation to assignment 1, the difference between a pedagogy which is about a pedagogy which is actually linking higher order skills with lower order skills, between pedagogy where children learn in order to communicate as opposed to in order to please the teacher, where the activity is situated. We're doing a television program. You think they will hate it? They will love it. And will you have a mess in the class? You will. But I'm working with principals from different schools around Darwin. They don't mind mess. We're going to bring drums into classroom. Why? Because texts are about emotion. Every emotion has a different rhythm. I want children to experience the rhythm of a sad text, of the riveting text, of the happy text, and all of that. So we will be actually quite loud. But the idea is to basically engage different senses in order to have an impact through our literacy engagement that we want on the people who will be receiving or watching our paintings or listening to our stories that we will be telling through our paintings, and will be engaging in it for whatever reasons that the television show will be engaging them for. So this is just basically an introduction to different concepts that you may want to consider when writing assignment 1 or when creating your reflections. A pedagogy which is just in case pedagogy, so in order for you one day to engage with these complex things, you need to know your ABCs, or in order to engage with those things, you need to learn your ABCs, so we better engage and then see what is it that we need to learn in order to do these big things, right? So the question is, what is it that we need to know in order to create an artistic expression of a story, right? So what is it that we need to learn in order to create this artistic expression of a story like a painting, as opposed to Before you ever do a painting, before you ever open the computer, before you ever do, you need to know these things. And it's two different types of pedagogies, and that's what I wanted to make the point. That's the point I wanted to make through our meeting today. So I might finish here. I hope that was relatively clear. And any questions? Oh, really? Lynn, that's great. Thank you so much. So if Stacy also has no questions, okay, all right. So we meet another time, and I will make this recording available, but it's very hard for people sometimes to access it. So within 24 hours, I will play using my own software to make it as compact and as edited as I did with the Collaborate Session 1. So thank you kindly.